You're watching Next Pitch, the student athlete playbook for parents raising tomorrow's athletes.
Hi, my name's Anthony Leveritz, host of the Next Pitch podcast, and on behalf of my producer, Jason Cardona, welcome to the show. Today, we are joined by Chris Dorst, former Stanford Cardinal and Olympic athlete, and has a remarkable story of qualifying for the 1980 Olympics, going through that boycott, and then qualifying again for the 1984 Olympics and earning a medal representing his country. Fascinating guy, and look forward to having him on the show. Welcome to the podcast, Chris. Thank you so much for joining us. I will have already properly introduced you, but how do you, well, first, thanks again for coming on, but how do you introduce yourself? What should our audience know? Who is Chris Dorst?
Oh gosh, well, first and foremost, I married well. We got three remarkable daughters, all of whom were competitive athletes in college. But I was just from an athletic standpoint, I was fortunate enough to be in the right place at the right time. There were a lot of things happening in sports in the mid 70s, and I got to Stanford really because I wasn't sure I was going to be any good at water polo, and we ended up winning the national championship when I was a senior. So again, we got the right collection of guys. We got a great coach when I was a sophomore, and things took off from there.
So what are you doing now? Yeah, you're still on the farm. I think I know your title, but I don't want to butcher it. So what are you doing at Stanford now?
I'm the director of guest services for Stanford Athletics, which means we do all the ushering, ticket taking, the light security kind of access control stuff. Essentially, I'm the one who gets blamed when something goes wrong on game day, and I have to respond to people. But it's it's fun. I mean, in some ways, I get paid to go to sports events, and in other ways, we did, I think, 240 athletic events just last year, and another 500, smaller events that we had to cover. So we're staying busy.
Well, I got a whole bunch of topics I want to talk to you about today, but let's go back in time to when you were a kid and started getting involved in sports how old were you when you first got in the pool? Did you do other sports along the way? What was your background of kind of getting to being an Olympic athlete? You don't just show up and you're an Olympic athlete. How did that process go for you, and when did it start?
Oh gosh, I had a great childhood and played pretty much every sport there was. And it's, I think, the only organized sports. I played Little League and did a little swim team, but I wasn't much of a, wasn't really focused on the swim team. I, played some tennis, played pickup basketball and football. And, back then it was, the whole travel team thing just wasn't an issue. If you made the all-star team as a Little League player, you played the city next door, which was a huge, it's like, gosh, we traveled 3 or 4 miles and maybe pass a better ice cream place for after the game. But I just remember playing all the time and getting together with, 10, 12 other guys and inventing games. You'd have, a mitt, a couple of balls, with towels, somebody had a net from something, and you'd come up with the rules, you'd play the game, you'd finish the game. The two guys who ended up being attorneys would argue the rules the entire time, and you'd finish, you'd go home, and the next day you'd come back and make a completely different game. I mean, it was just wonderfully organic. And I think, one of the things that sort of taught you was, some of the games that involve climbing trees or jumping over fences or getting down under a bush would require certain skills. You'd get picked first sometimes, you get picked last sometimes, and you just sort of dealt with it. And I don't know that kids are free to do that anymore. And I'm, you lament a little something about losing that, your ability to just be really creative and frankly, really stupid. Because a lot of times, you jump over the fence and land on the picket and,
Right.
Carve out your leg, right? You need some scars to sort of help you through life.
When did you get into water polo? When does that happen for you? Because obviously you played at the highest level you can play at in the sport. When did that start?
Well, I didn't start playing water polo till freshman year in high school. I was still playing Babe Ruth baseball, but my older brother had played football and used to come, practice on me and knock me across the room. And I thought, gee, this doesn't sound like as much fun. And one of my best friends was really a nationally ranked swimmer and said, hey, I'm going to go out for water polo. I said, I'm water safe. Heck, I can handle that. And one thing led to another. Again, we had a good enough team in high school where I was able to kind of grow and compete, and had some, great colleagues on the team. Had some great coaches who, the team kind of came together, and we did pretty well in our area. So that got some recognition from some colleges. But there was never sort of an Olympic dream. It wasn't like, gee, I'm doing this in order to make it to. I was doing it to make it to the next. When I was a freshman, I want to start on the Frosh Soft. Right when I'm a sophomore, I want to make the varsity team. Partly because you got better sweats and a cooler T-shirt. But it was there really wasn't any kind of I am doing this in order to get to play at the collegiate level. There was never any. Only really my senior year was kind of like, hey, I could do this in college. Wouldn't that be cool?
Now the recruiting process starts sometimes in the 8th grade, 9th grade for sure for high level, sports conferences like yours, the Pac-8, to now the ACC. We'll talk about that later in the show. But when did your recruiting process begin during that time frame? And what years were you at Stanford?
I was at Stanford from 73 to 77.
Okay.
So I was recruited in the early 70s, and recruitment was, gosh, a couple of postcards from coaches, saying, hey, Chris, one of whom misspelled my name, which, okay, I'm okay with that. Right. It was, hey, we want you to come play for us. We have seen you play, which wasn't the case with a couple of them, but that's okay. I was pretty serious about Stanford and Cal, and really Cal at the time had just an awesome team. They won the NCAA championships 72, 73, 74 with dominant players, huge guys. And I kind of looked at them and thought, gosh, if I play for them, I'm going to get broken in two. I mean, these guys are monsters. And so it took a recruiting trip all the way over to Berkeley. Gosh, 45 minutes away. Both my parents were Berkeley grads, by the way.
Okay.
So when I applied to Stanford, my dad made me pay for the application, which was, $25 at the time, I think, which was basically all the paper route money I had at the time. But
paper route. You just said a word that a lot of people aren't even going to know what that is. Paper route. I miss the paper boy.
A paper is a physical manifestation of the news printed on newsprint. Yeah. Anyway, but the idea was it was Stanford or Cal, and Stanford just seemed a little more my style of place. Did a recruiting trip over there, but didn't go to any classes. Basically played one of the first video games in the Stanford coffee house, and had, make your own. It was bacon, lettuce, and tomato sandwich day at the fraternity I was at, which pretty much sealed it for me. Anytime you could have all you could eat bacon, that was it.
That's a great start. That is a great start. All you can eat bacon is a great start to a recruiting trip.
You signed me up. Where do I go?
So you get to Stanford, you play water polo, you guys win the conference championship, correct? As a senior, is that right?
So we won the national championship.
National championship as a senior.
Yeah. We were 0-6 as a freshman. I didn't even play on the varsity as a freshman because they had a couple of older guys, and that ticked me off a little bit. But then we got a new coach, a guy who was named Art Lambert, who'd been the Olympic coach in 68 and 72. And he just whipped us into shape. He was no nonsense, really the, my way or the highway guy. Let's just say that the Positive Coaching Alliance probably was invented for people like this, because he was relentless in terms of his expectations of us, which was fabulous. It made me the player I was. Some people now would sort of cringe, but it was exactly what I needed. And he lit the fires as well as, helped me see what I needed to do.
Yeah. So you said you didn't start the sport with the idea that you wanted to be an Olympian someday, but you ended up being an Olympian. So when did this process happen for you of, okay, I'm pretty good at this game. There's an opportunity for me to do more. When did that happen?
Again, I don't think it was till my senior year. We, uh, gosh, our Stanford team actually went over to Moscow State in the summer before my senior year, played against the Russians and got just crushed. I mean, these guys were, in their late 20s and 30s. They were smoking cigarettes and had kids running around and, huge, swarthy. But, it taught us a little something about our game. Then we came back and really dominated our senior year. We lost a couple of games early, but it was a really, really good team, good, sort of perfect collection of the right guys in the right positions, doing the right sorts of things. And there were a couple of games where it was, you just sort of sat back and sort of watched perfection in front of you. We knew exactly what was going to happen. And, I was on top of my game, and we had 2 or 3 other guys who ended up making an Olympic team who were playing exceptionally well. And we had a style of play that was sort of, it was just relentless. Let's just keep coming. We're going to keep counterattacking. We're going to play smothering defense. I'm going to make the save. We're going to have 3 guys taking off in the other direction. And it was like orchestration. It was a beautiful, beautiful thing. And sometimes I miss those days, right? It's like, I was on top of my game. We were so good. People were like, they wouldn't want to play us, not because they would lose, but because we kind of embarrass them.
Yeah.
And that was, maybe I'm a little sick, but that just felt really good.
That there's nothing better as an athlete when you work that hard to get that good at something, and then the results show up. Like people who haven't played at that level or competed at that level don't understand though how much that takes to get to that point, because everybody's talented. There's not just that you're the most talented. There's something else that goes into that happening.
Well, it's really a recipe, right? It's not just we've got the 7 most talented guys. It's putting them in position to win as a team. And it was just, again, even at the Olympic level, although we had a phenomenal team there, I don't remember being as so confident going into events. I mean, I remember literally looking at people's eyes and having them just go, "Oh, can you speed the clock up? We just want to get, we get out of here and, go get something to eat," kind of thing. And, I was a goalkeeper. And so at the time they were shooting a lot of penalty throws, which were sort of instant throws from the, the 4-yard line. And I got a reputation for blocking a bunch of them just because, largely because we were living rent free in most people's heads, but also because I was just watching. We didn't have videotape back then. I'd spend time looking at shooters and, kind of charting their tendencies and checking things out. And you block a couple early on and people start thinking about it. And then they miss a little bit here and miss a little bit there. And it gets into their brain. And I love that. Man, did I just enjoy it was like taking guys' lunch money without having to beat them up. It was
and it wasn't illegal.
It wasn't illegal. Exactly.
For those listening out there, taking someone's lunch money is not the right thing to do, but if you can do it in sports, it's the greatest thing ever.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, we had a great team, and I'm still great friends with a number of guys on that team. We hung out. I just hung out a couple of days ago with one of my teammates. It was just you get together and you turn into 18-year-olds again. Yeah,
that lifelong, obviously you guys did something remarkable, and winning a national championship is pretty. It's hard to describe what that would feel like, but the anyone involved in athletics, that's probably the most important thing that you take away from it is the lessons that you learn and then the relationships that you build for life, having gone through something like that with a group of people that are just as committed as you are.
Well, I think you've got the relationships are you just can't duplicate that anywhere. I mean, there could be some real intense work situations, and you're just never going to get that. But it's more, in addition to that, it's I know what I can work so hard to get to a place that in anything in life, whether it's business, whether it's relationships, whether it's, whatever, I know I've done this.
Yeah.
Not being I wasn't the golden child. I didn't, somebody didn't anoint me early on to go, you would be an Olympian in this. It's no, you have to work hard. You have to really focus on things. Yeah, you have to sacrifice some stuff too. But if you want, the gold ring at the end of the journey, you can do it. And so that, A, that gives you a blueprint for life. B, that gives you the confidence that you can do it. And I was blessed. I was, again, right place, right time with the right kind of encouragement, let's just say.
Yeah.
It was
Well,
sometimes brutal.
then you get done with college, right? And the Olympics come knocking. In the 1980 Olympics are your first opportunity to compete in the Olympics. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And the boycott happens. And what is that like, right? So you are, and there's a whole generation of people that kind of probably understand what you went through when COVID happened, right? There was so many different things that people were preparing for that were shut off just like that, outside of their control, right?
Yeah.
What was that like for you and your teammates? Something outside of your control. You've spent all this time now working to get involved and gonna go get to represent your country on the biggest stage for your sport. What did that feel like?
It's interesting. That's a great analogy, Anthony, that, stuff you're working towards something, things that are completely out of your control kind of, hit everybody over the head. Again, I felt so fortunate to be part of the national team program. It's, you make the team and you get the sweats, you get the t-shirts,
Right.
you get to travel with the guys. And, we were, the U.S. team in 78, 79 was just kind of coming into its own. They'd missed qualifying for the 1976 Olympics, right? So this is the first time that water polo had put together an all-star team. Before, it had been groups of guys taken from different teams that had done well at the national championships, the AU national championships. And it was a, gosh, the next tournament we're going to beat these guys, and next tournament we're going to beat these guys. And hey, we're obviously going to go to the Olympics because we qualified, and things are going to move forward. I remember we were training, we all moved to Southern California to train full time because that's kind of where most water polo is kind of headquartered, and our coaches were down there. And I remember we were training in Long Beach, and, after practice, we go over and watch the USA hockey team, beat the Russians and beat the Finns and do this. You're kind of looking around going, this is after, Carter made his pronouncement in the January timeframe. And there was concern that, Russia and the Eastern Bloc countries might not come to Lake Placid. And so, it was okay. Hopefully they'll come to their senses. Hopefully they'll change their mind. Somebody will call their bluff, but no, it didn't happen. And yes, it was disappointing. Yes, it was, it was tragic in some ways, but at the end of the day, if that's the worst thing that happens to you in your life, you're doing pretty darn well.
Yeah.
Right. I just feel for, I had the privilege of coming back in 84. My wife, Mary Beth, made, the 80 team in every conceivable freestyle race. I mean, she'd actually had mono. And so she qualified for the 100 and the 200 and the 800, which was, they wouldn't let women swim the mile back then because it was, I don't know, too challenging for them. I don't know.
That's a conversation we need to have at some point in time. That I'm glad those things have changed.
Yeah. But anyway, and she missed 84. One day of qualifying, missed 84 by 3/100ths of a second. So I was just again, I've been blessed, been in the right place at the right time, and managed to get there again.
So when you finally get to the Olympics in 84, and you win a medal. Obviously, you guys won the silver medal in 84. Was there disappointment with not winning the gold, or was it we medaled? Like, what was that? You didn't quite win it. Like, how did that feel? Like, because I know the goal is to win the whole thing, right? No one shows up and says, I want to win a silver medal, but you still won a silver medal for your country. What was that feeling of accomplishment for your group?
I appreciate you bringing that up again. The scab had just healed over. It's funny. I don't think about it more than once a month now, but we didn't lose a game in 84. We were ahead by three goals going into the fourth quarter against Yugoslavia. They came back and tied us, and they won based on goal difference. And we made a flurry at the end, thought we'd scored the winning goal, but the referees called it back. And so at the end of the game, you sort of get out, you're kind of drained, and then they do the medal ceremony. You're kind of standing there, sort of not, you're still a little numb from having gone through that. I mean, looking back on it, it was a magical time, but we were the better team.
Yeah.
We were the better team. It still ticks me off that, a lot of things tick me off, but like I said, if this is the worst thing that happens, I'm doing okay.
Yeah, it's great perspective, right? And sometimes, and this is for parents and kids and coaches and everybody out there listening. Sometimes you're the better team and you just lose. Sometimes the outcome isn't what you want, and you just got to get back up and go do it again or move on to the next thing. It can't define who you are if you don't have the outcome that you're hoping for.
Yeah, and so many things are outside your control, right? And so you do the best with what you got, and hopefully things work out. And if they don't, you move on with life. I mean, I know a number of Olympians who are still living in the past. It's like, hey, look, remember what I did 40 years ago, and you're thinking, gosh, I graduated first in my class in fourth grade. That's
right.
Wonderful for you. Congratulations. That's great. Now what?
Yeah.
And I think having that perspective, I think for me, having the perspective of not sort of being a golden child and just being so excited about, getting on the team and getting a chance to play and getting the t-shirt, really, which is what it was all about, was just icing on top of the best cake you could imagine.
Yeah. Well, and you already mentioned your wife. I was gonna ask you about her. You obviously married well. Congratulations.
Completely.
Yeah.
Over the top.
Yeah. So, and the two of you had three daughters, correct?
Yes, sir. Yep.
High level athletes.
They all played NCAA level water polo. They all, played at the highest level. The youngest daughter, who went to Stanford, won 3 national championships while she was there. And the other two didn't, and that never comes up at all.
No.
We don't talk about it in our household.
What advice do you, having been a high level athlete, married a super high level athlete as well, and then have children, what advice do you give parents who are raising athletes? I think folks who weren't athletes and haven't experienced it go about this quite often differently than folks who have been through it. What is your advice to any parent out there as they're raising these young people who have these aspirations and dreams of being big time athletes?
Well, first off, I didn't marry for DNA, but it sure as hell worked out nicely for me, right? I mean,
yes.
I think it's more, our kids played everything. They played softball, they played soccer, they played volleyball, they played, they were on the swim team, but it was, you're out there splashing around. They had a couple of opportunities to do, travel teams, but it was, they were too busy moving on to the next season. But it was also, when I remember, our middle daughter went, was going to high school, and, the first quarter of high school was either water polo or volleyball. And she really liked volleyball, and she was good at volleyball. And, we just sorted down and said, look, if you play volleyball, mom and I are going to show up and cheer like crazy. We have no idea what's going on, but if you play water polo, dad's going to be a little bit more involved.
Yeah.
And I ended up coaching him, during their high school, not at the high school, but on a club team, and learned a lot about myself that I'm sure a competent psychiatrist could have a field day with. But I think the idea is, it was, for us, it was important that they do a lot of things. And that same daughter wanted to go from water polo to basketball, because she was also a good basketball player. And she tried out for about 2 weeks and certainly could have made the team. She kind of goes, I'm exhausted. I'm tired. I can't do this. And it was okay.
Yeah.
Right. There's no, you need to do this and then come back and do your, cello lessons. We'll have Mandarin this afternoon at 2:00. And, it was, I think and you may want to talk to them and get a different perspective. I think they were as involved as they wanted to be. and they were okay with that.
Yeah, and I think it's such critical advice, right? Is that the parent oftentimes relives or lives their hope for athletic experience through their child's lives, and forget that it's their child's lives and their child's athletic experience, not their own. We already had the opportunity to live ours, and it's great to provide them with opportunity, but they need to be the driver of that, of what's important to them, especially as they get a little bit older.
Yeah, and it's, you just lose sight of the fact that what are they doing this for, right? I mean, this really should be fun. It should be instructive. It should be a building block to something else. Now, I won't say that I was the perfect, most patient parent. I mean, there were times when, you know,
Well, you're a parent.
you, when I
anybody
knew a little
anybody
something
who's
about
a
the
parent
sport.
understands. Like, you don't have to say I wasn't the most perfect patient. You just, I'm a parent.
Yeah. But again, it was interesting coaching, learning to coach girls, having come from an environment that was just very much my way of the highway, and a lot of expletives, a lot of personal comments, uh, which obviously I didn't use around the girl, but it was you. There is no way to coach women the way our coach had coached us in either in high school or at the national team, and it took me about 2 weeks to figure that out.
Yeah.
And but it worked out great. I mean, we had a great group of kids on the club team, and it really, sort of our daughter's best friends. So, we'd go from tournament to tournament, have some fun. We'd always go to the Hawaiian tournament at the end of the summer, which was a thrill for the parents because, well, it was Hawaii. Um, but it was a real magical time. I'm just, I'm blessed that I had a chance to do that with the kids.
That's great. So let's talk a little bit about the state of athletics now, right? You're in a on a very unique campus. Obviously, the academic prowess that Stanford provides to its student athletes, and the way that is respected globally for what it is as a university. Also has a strong tradition of athletics on the West Coast, right? As part of the Pac-8, then the Pac-10, then the Pac-12, and now, with your background as a student athlete, when it was the Pac-8 and seeing it through all of its iterations, what is the feeling? And without getting you in trouble, what is the feeling of being on the Pacific Coast in a conference that's named the Atlantic Coast Conference? Like, how is that thought about on your campus and around the people that you grew up with in your world playing there?
I certainly can't speak on behalf of the university, but it's I understand why we're in the Atlantic Coast Conference now. I lament the fact that there isn't a West Coast, a Pac-12 kind of conference, only because I think there was something pretty special about, the Pacific time zone and going up and down the Pacific coast and playing folks. I'm certainly not an expert on conference realignment, but it just seemed like some of these decisions were sort of made, in a context that, you know, we were sort of maybe hoping for something different. And I can't speak to what the Pac-12 conference might have been thinking, but I don't know that folks were thinking far enough in advance to be able to go, gee, this is unsustainable. How do we get out in front of it? How do we solve a problem that hasn't really materialized yet? That said, hindsight's marvelously 2020, and
Yeah.
everyone looks like an intellect going back and saying, if I'd have done that differently. But it's just I feel bad that people have to travel to the East Coast and compete there in their quote unquote conference games. There was something about the West Coast Conference that was just special. But again, I miss the fact that the Giants aren't playing at Candlestick Park anymore. So what do I know?
Well, I think you know a lot. The idea that the Conference of Champions doesn't exist in its in some sort of way is really sad for just the regional regional rivalries, the ability to be close to home and watch your teams play on a regular basis. As a former coach in that league, and now as a fan of growing up here in Oregon on the I-5 corridor, I'm super disappointed that it's not around anymore.
Yeah, and I don't know that kids these days would sort of understand what they're missing. I mean, you don't know what you don't know, right? But there was something special about that. But at the same time, I mean, college athletics is changing so much and so quickly that we haven't even seen close to the end of this conference realignment thing. I think in 2-3 years it's going to be a much different landscape than it is today. In 5 to 10 years from now, maybe there won't be a landscape at all. It's just going to be 2 big blobs, 3 big blobs, whatever it is. It's sort of like the Olympic movement, right? I remember a time, I'm old enough to remember a time when the Olympic movement was about amateurism, right? And so you had, kids who weren't getting paid anything or couldn't be paid anything trying to compete at a really high level. And every 4 years they had one shot at, stardom, one shot at a chance to kind of take advantage of their athletic ability. Now it's a business. Is it better? Yeah, I don't know that it's better or worse. It's just different. And there was something about the old way of doing things where you'd watch the Olympics not so much to see Michael Jordan and LeBron James, but to see some kid who you've a Dave Waddle, right, or Dick Fosbury, or somebody just coming out of nowhere and doing something, going, that's amazing, as opposed to this guy's been making 200 or 300 grand a year from his shoe contracts alone, or he's got an NIL deal that he goes to the NFL and he takes a pay cut, right?
Yeah,
it's no better or worse. I think the old way was just a little bit easier on the eyes. Let's just put it that way.
What did you learn from your athletic journey? Like, what as you go walking around day to day doing what you do, both as a parent coach, now within your role within the university, day to day, like what are the things that you learned from that journey that have stuck with you all through your whole life?
Oh, another easy question.
Yeah.
So I think it's, there's something special about athletics. That's different than being in the band. It's different than being the PhD. There's something about challenging yourself physically, which includes mental, which includes spiritual, which includes, sort of time. I mean, all that stuff, but challenging yourself against somebody else, competition is, a lot of people decry competition like it's horrible and, someone's going to win and someone's going to, it's like, no, I think that makes you better at whatever you do, win or lose, right? Going into a situation knowing I've got to give my best or else I'm going to end up on the tail end of this thing means that every time the whistle blows to start the game, you're putting yourself out there. You're testing whether your preparation is up to snuff, and it's more than physical, and it's more than just you. There are some individual sports, obviously, but for us, it was, I got my guys. One of the things that kind of lit the fire under me, certainly as at the last couple of years at Stanford, but on the national team level, was I want to work so hard that my teammates are going to be able to count on me. I want them to see the effort I put in, so there's never a doubt. It's like he's going to be ready. He may make the save, may not make the save, but I know he's not going to be, asleep or, checking out the good-looking girls in the stands or just kind of not in a position to do his very best. And I think there's a beauty to that. I don't know. I don't want to get, maudlin or turn this into, the Greek ideal of the, the mind and the body, but it's real. It's true.
Yeah.
And I think it makes you a better person because you accept losses later in life. You accept situations where things sort of fall short of what you wanted, even though it's not your, it's out of your control. There's a real beauty to being able to accept things and just say, hey, look, you win some, you lose some. And if you win more than you lose, you're living a pretty good life.
It's so good. I was going to add a point to it, but there's no reason for me to add anything to that. That is a great answer. So I really appreciate you coming on and chatting with us today. We finished this up with same thing for everybody. Is when I was coaching, I had my kids build me a crystal ball, imaginary crystal ball for their 5-year future, their 10-year future, so we could get them the best future for them out of the degree that they got, the educational experience, the basketball experience when they're played for us. What we try to get our guests to do is build a reverse crystal ball. Go back and put yourself at 14 years old and knowing everything that you know now. And you don't have to be, you can pick an age, but somewhere early in the journey, what's that single piece of advice that you would give yourself if you could go back and have a conversation with young Chris Dorst?
Well, 14, that's sort of prime knucklehead years, right?
I have one, so I know. And we are all knuckleheads at that age.
You know something, Anthony? I think if I'd known anything more at that age, I would have screwed things up. I mean, there
great.
and I don't know whether there was being blissfully ignorant is something you want to cling to in life, but there's something to just not knowing what's around the corner and just saying, look, if I progress, if I do the best I can right here, right now, not worried about, if I twist my ankle here, I might not make the Olympic team. It was never like that. It was just, I want to get to the next level. I want to get to the next, over the next hill. And from there, I'll go to the next hill. And so I think if my 14-year-old self picked up a crystal ball and heard something from me, they just kind of go, you're out of your mind. You're out of your mind. So you win a national championship, you make 2 Olympic teams, you win a medal, you marry the supermodel who happens to be one of the best swimmers the country's ever produced. You're high. You must be downwind of the kids who are smoking reefer in the parking lot at high school. It would never have been this good.
Yeah.
Right? And so again, right place, right time. I had such a blessed career and living the dream now. I mean, we got grandkids now, and it's, I could complain about a few things, but nobody would listen. So I just prefer to take it as a real positive.
You got the grandkids in the pool yet?
Oh, they're, the eldest is 3. It's a little early to start doing that, but it's
not in there yet.
Now it's just strength training. Okay. We're just
yeah. It's strength and the little bench press.
Little bench press,
Well, now to the super important part of this. I need a dad joke from you. Make everybody tell us a dad joke on here. And I know that one that you had prepared had gotten taken. So we're putting you on the spot to see if you can come up with a second one.
Okay. Well, and again, my daughters, if they ever listen to this, are going to kill me on this one.
That's perfect. That's why we do this.
That's why we're doing this. So it's either public humiliation or private, humiliation as well. How do scientists freshen their breath?
How do scientists freshen their breath? I have no idea. How does that happen?
Experiment. I'm sorry.
I love it.
It's a dad
good.
thing. Yeah, it's a dad thing.
That's a Stanford graduate dad joke right there. That is exactly what that is. That's awesome. Well, Chris, I am so grateful that you took the time to come on and chat with us today. I've really enjoyed the conversation, and I couldn't be more grateful to have you on the show.
It's wonderful talking to you. And again, next time I'm up in your neck of the woods, we'll continue the conversation. How's that?
It'll be great, and maybe over a round of golf.
Oh, that'd be difficult. I'd really enjoy it. Thank you so much.
Thanks again, Chris. Anthony Leverett's back here, host of the Next Pitch podcast, and just had unbelievable opportunity to it's the first time I've ever chatted with Chris. Chris Dorst was on the show. Funny guy, high level in all ways, and really appreciate him coming on the show. We talked about a whole bunch of different stuff, and it might be hard to hear some of it because I'm laughing so hard. I don't know how that shows up, but I enjoyed my time with him. But one of the one of the things that keeps coming up when we have these conversations with either current or former athletes is that athletics taught them a process that, whether they won or they lost, taught them how to go through a process, and then if they won, continue achieving great things and keep striving for more. But even more important is that how to lose. And I watch this every single, well, maybe not every day, but every single time I go watch one of my kids play, or back in my days of coaching, the lessons that can be learned from failure in sport is what, to me, especially in youth sports, is what sports is supposed to be about. Yes, it's fun to win, and it is important to have success, and learning how to build on that success is critical. But life is going to slap you in the face. Things are going to happen to you. You're going to get punched. And having a safe space like athletics to learn how to get up from a failure, compete again, work again, go through a process again, knowing that there's a chance that you're going to feel that feeling of failure again, but putting yourself out there to do it again, it is a critical thing. And every time I get a chance to talk about this, I am going to bring it up. That is what coaching is about. All right, what being part of youth sports is all about. And then the second thing that Chris brought up was coaching his kids. And we didn't spend a ton of time talking about this. So I kind of want to dive on into this topic a little bit more. Just as a coach of youth sports, high school sports, even collegiate sports, there is a time that you need to be more intense with your kids. And as you go up and level, that ratchets up. But remembering that the people that you're talking to, the young person, the first, second, third grader, the junior high kid, the high school kid, the college athlete, they're human beings and they have human emotions. And I talk about this a lot. The way you start a sentence, a way you start a conversation goes a long way to how that conversation is going to end. And if you start conversations with expletive, what the are we doing? It doesn't matter what comes out of your mouth next. The kid is not going to take that information, internalize it, and use it to get better. When you're coaching young people, yes, you have to be critical of them. You have to coach them and teach them and help them. They want that. They want to be trained. But how you start that conversation is going to go a long way to how that information is going to be received. And my advice, every single time you see something that you want to correct, try to find a way to begin the conversation with the positive. I love how hard you're working, but when you made this play, this was what the outcome was, and this is why. This is how you need to do that better, as opposed to, what in the hell are you doing? What was that? What are you trying to? That is not received. And your goal isn't to get something out. Your goal is to get something received from that player. So start that conversation with something positive, and it might be hard. It might not be a very good player, but you want to help them get a little bit better. Find something positive. Do the work to find something positive and deliver then your coaching point. And I think you'll find a ton more success in how your information is received and watching your players grow and develop. Again, on behalf of Jason Cardona, thank you for listening to our podcast. Please follow, rate us. We are now up on social media all over the place. So say hello and keep those reviews and notes coming in. And until next time.